Have you ever got into cross the barrier of pharmaceuticals? Has that ever crossed your minds? I know there's a ton of money in that, and you have the relationships with all these doctors. Have you ever thought about moving over to that part of the business?
Yeah, if I could go back in time, 10 years, and I only got like 1 minute to spend with myself, I would just say, stay in your lane and don't get into any, because it's like pharmaceuticals is, what is that, like $1 trillion industry? I don't even know. Like, I mean, we're good at what we do, but we're not going to compete with like Pfizer and like all these big companies. They squash us in a heartbeat. Like, so, I mean, yeah, but at the end of the day, if we did pharmaceuticals, we'd just be selling somebody else's product. And then you're back to the whole, like, you sell it for them for a year, 2, 3 years, you do really well. Then they go, okay, hey, thanks for your time. We're bringing somebody else in at a much lower cost. So it's not our area of expertise. We stay in, we'll stay in what well, that's our vision.
And how is cannabis now? I'm in that industry, and how is that in your industry? Is it, as I know, a lot of doctors are making that basically that term, like, okay, we can offer. I don't know. I feel like they can offer it, but they really can't. It's like, hey, you should try this. We can't sell it to you, but I feel like doctors are getting more on board with cannabis, but it's kind of a, hey, you should try this, but you didn't hear from me. Do you think that's ever going to be a staple in the medical community where they can make it in a pharmaceutical grade and sell it as doctors?
They say in the medical industry, everything happens 10 years later. So it's like in the real world, some innovation will come out, everybody catches on, they're like, boom, it happens real quick. In medical, there's so many barriers between like insurance companies, hospitals, studies. I mean, anytime they want to do something on pharmaceuticals, it's like a 5-year study. So everything is just delayed. I think you nailed it. I just think you're probably ahead on the chessboard in terms of like, it'll eventually be there. I mean, it makes complete sense. Why not? Like, I mean, what's the alternative is like some, lab engineered pharmaceutical. It's like, I don't know, it's pretty crazy. So when you drill down to it, a lot of the stuff in medical makes you scratch your head, and you're like, even the cold therapy thing, it's like we're not, because I don't really have a dog in the fight. We don't make a cold therapy machine. We do other people's. Like, why would you not use cold therapy over a pain med? Like, it's not even like, I don't know, but the insurance company will deny the cold therapy, then pay for the pain med. It's like, it's a head scratcher.
I kind of feel like maybe they do it because it doesn't work as well. You can kind of keep selling that product over and over again. If something works well, you sell it once and it's gone. I don't know. I hate to put on that villain hat there.
If you want to put on the villain hat, we'll probably get canceled for this. But this is what it is. This is the freaking reality. Pharmaceutical companies have more money than God, right? And they have lobbyists everywhere. And they infiltrate Congress and DC and regulators, insurance companies. It's all like it's all backdoor money everywhere. And at the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to. It's like, I don't know, Pfizer medications approved. It's like, none of the studies even back this thing up. Yeah, well, this is the one that's on our plan. It's like, oh, I wonder how that happened. Like, so that's what it all comes down to, man. It's all backdoor money, lobbyists. They get really high reimbursement for stuff that's all paid on the back door. I mean, that's the reality. So
yeah. No, I wanted to briefly touch on a couple things. One, once again, I appreciate that you are humble in what you're doing, saying that you don't know a lot about this stuff. You also mentioned a little bit about DVT, that's deep vein thrombosis, I believe. That's clearly not something I'm sure you knew about going into it, but then start learning about it. So what I'm curious is, like, you guys, I read a quote that said you guys are like sort of the leading company when it comes to, DVT and helping people out with that. Where along the lines are you, like, you know what I mean? Like, is someone bringing you a product and saying, hey, this might help for this, and then you're researching it, looking into it? Or are you kind of like, hey, let's look at this problem and try to fix it? Like, I'm curious kind of how that comes about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like 3 years ago, we won a big medical device innovation award, and they presented this thing to me, and it felt really good at the time. We get on stage, get this award, like medical device saving lives, you innovated. And the next day, I turned to like my counterpart in the company, Austin, who we worked together for like over a decade, and I'm like, bro, like all we did we just took this clunky unit sitting on the side of a hospital, right, bed. And we're like, we bring it to the engineers, like, how do we make this thing smaller? They're like, oh, this technology is like 20 years old. We just do this, this, and this. We just listen to people like, okay. And then they're like, oh, if instead of plugging it in, now you can use a lithium ion battery. I didn't invent a lithium ion battery. I didn't all we did is took it to engineers, like, how do we make this better? We made some changes. We talked to the patent attorney. He filed the patents. And I turned to Austin like, bro, we just won this like huge medical device innovation award with like scientists and medical doctors in the room and all this. They're like, oh, because I mean, when you look at the big picture, we did do something. Like, we took a big, clunky, loud device, we made it smaller, we made it portable, and we made it hook up to the patient's leg. But in all reality, I might be dumbing it down too much, but it took us like a year and a half, 2 years to do it. We changed designs and did all these things, and it's like we did. I don't know. Like, you look at it, and it really wasn't that big of a thing. We didn't. It was like, we're not putting a man on the moon or doing anything like you hear about that's too crazy. And I do think in life sometimes, like, even if you really, really think about it on a high level, Uber is like a multi-billion-dollar company. All Uber did is like, hey, you used to call up on the phone to get a taxi. We're going to do that through an app. And then we're going to create they use mapping programs that are through Google and other platforms. Like, you really dive in. I know what they do now is like a lot more elaborate and stuff. But in the very beginning of Uber, they were doing it all manual. I don't know if you ever heard the case study on it, but they actually had like people sitting in rooms of customer service that were patching taxis and stuff for you, but it's just through the app in the beginning. And that's why my whole point on all this is like, you can create a really, really good business by just starting. And they call it MVP. It's a minimal viable product. It doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning, but it just needs to help people a little bit. And then over time, you can make it better and better and better. And that's probably the big takeaway, because I think you get to a certain level and it's like, oh, that's great what Elon's doing with, self-driving cars, but I'm not, it's like, I'm not going to get to that level. But if you take it a step back and you're like, well, we're all like experts in certain areas. So it's like, on this particular thing in life, like, I do know it pretty well. How can I make that small thing better? And boom, you got a business,
And then I want to touch on a really important aspect of your life. I want to talk about that pool.
Yeah.
That is, as you know, I think you've been to my house. I love pools. I love rocks. And you just made my backyard look just like a little speck of dust compared to what you built. Tell us about that, because I'm a backyard guy. I like rocks. I like waterfalls. And that is the most amazing backyard. And I know you sold it. But tell us about that. I mean, you were on a TV show. I watched that. It is absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like it in a residential home. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that all comes back to vision, right? And I'll say a small disclaimer. You did inspire me, because on social media I'd see your stuff for a while, and you'd be like, you got the water slide back there and the rocks and like people jumping off and throwing those backyard parties. I'm like, that's so cool. So I small props to you for that. But it started. I'm a huge like vision board guy. Like, I'm kind of cheesy like that. I probably put more time, energy into vision, and then that vision will be like what inspires like my plans and stuff. So I don't know when it was, but 15 years ago, let's say, I was in Kauai at the Grand Hyatt in Kauai, and I had no money at the time. I just had barely enough money to afford that vacation. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of that, but the Grand Hyatt has like the most spectacular pool ever, and it's like it's fascinating. It's like there's like pools that run into other pools that come into the lagoon, and I was like, I'm gonna build out in my backyard one day. And I've talked about this all the time, and nobody ever believed me. They're like, okay, whatever. Like pipe dream. And then when I started building this thing, people were like, holy shit, like, you really are building this resort in your backyard. So and I didn't know, like, my goal was never, I didn't start this to be like, what's the square footage of the biggest pool ever built? I'm going to beat that. Like, that was not the goal. The goal was with the designer, I'm like, how do we duplicate this resort in Kauai? And in a backyard. And at first he's like, that's not really possible. And then we started like engineering things and doing it. Like, I think we can do this. And, the long story short, when it was all finished, because we didn't know, we kept adding stuff and we changes and things. He's like, this is the pool manufacturer that I worked with was the second biggest manufacturer in California. So they called the first biggest. Like, have you ever built a pool that's 270,000 gallons? And the competitor's like, no, not. We have one pool. It's like 190 or 220. I don't know, whatever the number was. There was a pool that was like 20% smaller. And then they called like two more companies because you really can't. It's really hard to pull up on Google and be like, pool gallons in California and get accurate data. We looked it up online because I want to make sure we weren't misquoting. Because when I sold the house, I want to make sure that statement was correct, that it was the biggest pool ever built in California. But according to Google and according to like the 5 biggest manufacturers of pools in California, nobody's ever built one that big. And that thing had a lazy river. It had like a jet propulsion system with these jet engines that would push water and you could float this lazy river. It came into like an underground cave that was, I think it was like 17 feet deep, the cave. The water slide, these engineers from Michigan had to fly out to the house because there was like, we built it. I said, I want to go as fast as humanly possible. And they're like, well, at one point on one of the curves, it'll throw your kids out of the slide. And like, it doesn't pass code. So we need to slow it down. And I was like, well, let's not slow it down. Like, can we put if we tube it? The first was all open, like an open water slide. And the engineer's like, yeah, if you tube it, you could, the kids might spiral inside, but they'll still stay in there. I'm like, oh, perfect. That's as long as they don't, we'll keep them in that tube. So that thing was like, it was a machine, man. Like the water slide was 105 feet long, and it jammed. It was like there was people that didn't want to do it again. They're big adults, like that was fun, but that water slide was fast.
Well, what was the total bill when everything was said and done? I know with mine, you keep adding stuff and adding this, and I don't even want to compare mine to yours. It's not even close. But did you do all the math? And what did that come out to? It's probably an insane amount.
I mean, the pool alone was over $1 million. I kept adding on stuff. So and I don't know where you delineate the difference. Cause like when you go to like sidewalks and lighting and sound systems, and I mean, it just keeps going. Like, I'll tell you this is like another lesson in life. Like, I lost money on that. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't one of these things that was like a labor of love. And like, I would have stayed in that house forever. I love that backyard. Cause I'm the same thing as you, Brandon. When I go look at homes, even when I moved to Austin, Texas, I actually weird. The realtors always laugh at me. I don't go through the front door to look at a house. I go to the side gate and walk right to the backyard. I'm like, what's the backyard look like? Like, if that backyard's not checked, then it's not like I won't buy the house. So that was my dream backyard. If it wasn't for California and all the bullshit like regulations and COVID and overtaxing of people, California's got to be the most beautiful state. I don't think anything will ever. California is gorgeous, and I love the people there. I love everything about it. But that's the worst ran state in the nation, in my opinion. And being a business owner, it's really hard to have your company based in California. I'll tell you this: like 2 years later, it's 10 times easier running a company in Texas than California. So I'll always go back to California and visit. I got my brothers, my family, all that's back there. I'm coming back there again in 2 weeks. But it's. Yeah, when it basically came down, after COVID, I'm like, I got this amazing resort in my backyard, and I'm stoked. But just running a company there is very, very difficult. That was the reason I sold it. It wasn't for you build something like that, a pool like that. It's like a lot of time and energy. It's not the money. It's just like I don't know. It's you wake up every morning and you can you enjoy your backyard. So.
What was your energy bill like? I can't even imagine, like, because you were PG&E, right?
Bro, nobody understands that pool was like a 2-year thing. Like, I had to go apply. I had to go fight with the city for 6 months. I had to get it. It had its own separate power grid. The jet engines that pushed just the lazy river alone, it had jet engines built into the bottom that pushed water. That alone, those 2 jet engines put out more power when they were running than like 3 homes combined. Like they were, I mean, that was just, the thing had like a normal pool had like 1 or 2 pool pumps, maybe 3 pool pumps. That had 28 pool pumps just to keep it clean. Like that was the pump. It was like, I mean, the thing was, it was a little overkill.
I'll say I think my favorite part of it is the sunken fire pit that you had in there too. I thought that was amazing how you're basically in the ground, but you got the water around you and the fires cooking. Was that your idea? Was that one of your vision board ideas, or was that something that like the engineers kind of threw your way?
I mean, I had a lot of like high level pictures of just like what I want to do. Like, here's things I want. They kind of put those Tetris pieces together, you know? So, I mean, I wanted the fire pit for sure, but they were able to like take my scatterbrain ideas and basically like make it all work with, you know, the flow and everything. So, hey,
Yeah, no,
that Michael Rubin thing, they just do that Hamptons party up there.
What was it?
That party they just do in the Hamptons, like Jay-Z, Beyonce.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Ben Affleck, like Leonardo DiCaprio was there, the Kardashians, like just everybody was there, right? I was thinking, I was like, man, that was one thing that really, really made me miss that pool when I was seeing those pictures posted of all that party. I'm like, because that pool was like set up to be the world's greatest like party spot. Like,
Who bought it? Was there a local business guy or who was the one that actually bought it?
I mean, I can't legally say.
Okay, but was it a friend or was it?
No, that's somebody you would know. It was a guy that did franchises, but I'm not supposed to disclose it. So.
Yeah, got it. Well, we thank you for your time. I mean, you had a wealth of knowledge to give the listeners, and we love how humble you are, and what a awesome success story. Leaving here, what advice can you bestow on all our listeners? If you could, you know, in a couple of sentences, someone that's listening wants to start a business, what's the best advice you can give them?
Yeah. So there's like 100 pieces of advice, right? So it's like just like one thing I'd say is focus on the next level up. So like, for example, I'm doing this like mentorship program right now. And in the mentorship program, there's like 10 levels of success. Like, so if you have a business, let's say you're in that $0 to $100,000 range of like what your net worth, even if you're not a business, like let's just say you're a corporate person doing pretty well. I don't really want to do my own company. I'd rather just be inside a company. That's fine. Whatever your net worth is, take that next level. There's 10x. So you go like the first, group would be the people like 0 to 100 grand. Then you go 100 grand to a million. Then you go a million to 10 million. And then you go 10 million to 100 million. And one thing I always did, you don't want to go focus on 2 or 3 levels up from you, because it gets like right now, like me trying to wrap my head around like what Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, like it gives me a headache, and I'm like, dude, I can't keep up. Like, but if I go, hey, my net worth's 100 million, and I go meet somebody, and I've done this, like I've got a few of these guys I met through MIT that are billionaires, but they're just they're at like 1 billion. They're not at 200 billion or anything crazy. And I'm only 10x away from them. And they're a little bit older, and they can show me the path of how they got there and things they can do and things they did with like real estate and just like certain like power moves. Just find out whoever it is above you that's just 10x higher. So if your net worth's 10 grand, find somebody that's worth 100 grand. Like, how do you get that next level? And then once you get there, go to the next one. Like if you're 100 grand net worth, find somebody who's a millionaire. If you're a millionaire, find somebody 10 million. You get it. And I think that's really, really important. If you just find the next level up and learn from that person, you just take it stage by stage, like 5 years at a time, you can move up pretty quick, and you learn from them. Because I'll tell you this, the one thing I've learned is the people that are worth $1 billion do things totally different than the people that are worth like 10 billion. Like the billionaires, they're not in their companies very much. They're staying high level. They're doing investment stuff. They're super big picture. Whereas like if you're a new entrepreneur, like the 1 million level, you need to dive into your company. You need to be hands-on. You need to scale it. Like there's different stages to entrepreneurship and business and success. I just say like, just focus on that next level. Find a mentor that is, the next stage above you, 10x, and learn from them and duplicate it. It's really, really powerful. They can teach you how to skip years that may have taken you way longer. So that'd be my last piece of advice.
All right.
I love it. Yeah. And I just got to say, I think what you're doing is great. I see why you have success and why people seem to like working for your company. I look forward to when you guys become international so that you could become Precision International Medical Products, PIMP.
I love it.
Just throwing it out there.
Go trademark that.
We appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. So much knowledge that you've given our listeners. So, Two Bees in a Pod, Sweeter Than Honey podcast. We're out. Jeremy Perkins, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you.
Pleasure.
Thanks for watching Two Bees in a Pod. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, and thank you for all the love and support.